Votes have already been cast in some parts of New Hampshire. Pete Buttigieg and Bernie Sanders are the heavy frontrunners heading into today, but two different candidates came out on top in very early voting districts.
So who will take New Hampshire? Joining us live is author of The Liberal Invasion of Red State America and analyst for the Young Americans for Liberty, Kristin Tate. Kristin, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. Great to be with you.
Thanks for being here. So, obviously people up there, they like Elizabeth Warren, they like Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders, it seems to be more at this point. But now it's also Pete Buttigieg. So I'm wondering, you being from there, your family's still there, you still have friends there. When did you see this shift for Pete in New Hampshire?
Yeah, so 6 months ago, there were signs everywhere for Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, but now the political landscape up there is a little bit different. In the last month, especially the last week, Buttigieg signs have been popping up on every single street corner, so I suspect a lot of voters up there are starting to realize that a Bernie Sanders or a Warren nominee may not have the best shot at beating Trump in a general election. And then, of course, there's Joe Biden, who's basically just become an embarrassing gaffe machine at this point. But I still think Bernie will probably pull out a win in New Hampshire. He just has such great name recognition there, being from Vermont. But Buttigieg is really experiencing a surge, especially after Iowa.
Yeah, it certainly is. Let's take everybody up to teeny tiny Dixville, Notch, New Hampshire, almost to the Canadian border. I think is it Coos County? Is that right?
Sounds right.
I think that's how you say it. Look at Michael Bloomberg there with there's 4 votes. I mean, this is not really a bellwether for anything.
Write-in votes.
It's just kind of fun to watch, though. But look at Bloomberg, who's really not even in this thing yet, with 2 votes, and then you got Pete and Bernie right there. What do you think the rest of the state spells out for Michael Bloomberg? Do you think he's popular in some of these places, more popular than people think?
He could be. New Hampshire tends to be a very practical state that sort of gravitates towards moderates.
Yeah.
Right now, it seems like the Democrats are really just looking for someone who has the best shot at beating Donald Trump.
Is there any enthusiasm for Amy Klobuchar?
There is. Again, she's more of a moderate candidate. I think she got a nice little boost after Iowa. One thing that we really need to watch in New Hampshire that makes it a little bit different from Iowa is the independent voters.
Right.
About 42% of New Hampshire voters are independents, registered independents. And keep in mind, the primaries are not closed primaries. So you're going to be seeing Democrats and independents casting their vote. New Hampshire is a very libertarian state. We have that streak running throughout the whole state. There are pockets of strong liberalism, but generally it's still a very rural, right-of-center state. At Young Americans for Liberty, we've knocked on literally thousands of doors in New Hampshire. The message we get from voters is pretty consistent.
Sure.
They are very concerned about taxes, and they don't want government-run health care up there.
When you look at how this might turn out in a convention, and you have, I mean, there's such a split in the Democrat Party right now. You really almost have 2 parties in one trying to get power. You've got the Bernie Sanders, Elizabeth Warren side, and then everybody else. The chances of a brokered convention here, do you see that happening in July in Milwaukee?
It's definitely a possibility. Moving out of Iowa, normally the field is narrowed down a little bit. The front runners are identified. But at this point, the left's 5 top-tier candidates have shown no signs that they are going to be pulling out of this race. Meanwhile, Michael Bloomberg continues to plaster the TV airwaves and even YouTube with tons of advertisements. So between Bloomberg's billions of dollars, the Iowa disaster, Biden's support with African-American voters, and then Bernie's really strong base of progressives, a brokered convention is a real possibility. I saw some forecast models from 538 that said there's a 24% chance of this happening. And this would be great news for Trump, a brokered convention, because any candidates who lose after a convention process would probably be more upset and angry, and their bases could become demobilized.
Very good point.
We'll see. Kristin, thank you for joining us.